For today's video we're going to take a look at a Plus Model T key-driven time adding machine made in the UK by the Bell Punch company. As with many of these mechanical calculators and adding machines, their history is complicated and filled with companies merging and designs changing hands. The original comptometers were designed by Felt and Tarrant in the late 1800s. Around 1940, the Bell Punch company started making a key-driven adding machine similar to the Felt and Tarrant machines. These were originally branded as the London Computator Corporation, and that name was later changed to Sumlock. Around 1960, the Bell Punch company bought the UK rights to the comptometer name from Felt and Tarrant, or at least what was left of Felt and Tarrant, and changed their brand name to Sumlock Comptometer Limited. In the early 1930s, Petters, and that's the same Petters that made some of the stationary engines you may have seen in my other videos, made a simpler key-driven adding machine called the pettometer, with its keys only going up to number 5. In the mid-30s, Bell Punch bought the rights to these machines from Petters, and at the end of the 30s they began selling them rebranded as Plus adders. It's one of these machines that we're looking at today. This is a late example, probably dating from the 1960s. Also of note, in the early 60s, Sumlock started producing one of the first electronic calculators, the Anita, with its rather lovely Nixie tubes. So unlike the pinwheel calculators and other machines that I've shown before, where you have to enter the number into the input register and then crank the handle to actually add them into the output register, with a key-driven machine like this Plus adding machine, as soon as you press one of the buttons and release it, that number is added into the output register straight away. So for simple addition, it's actually a lot quicker because it's only one operation rather than having to enter the number and then wind the handle, which would be 2 operations. So let's say I want to add some numbers together. I'll just clear that one that I'd put in, and I want to add 10 plus 13 plus 33 plus 44, and it gives you 100, and for each number you're adding you just have to type the number in and it automatically adds into the output register. You'll notice that so far I haven't used this end of the machine. That's because this particular machine is actually for adding up time rather than currency or just normal decimal numbers. So you've got hours in this section, that's normal base 10, so you could use that for normal calculations. But then you've got minutes in these 2 columns. And then over here it's not seconds but it's hundredths of minutes. So the maximum you can have in this column would be a 5, and in the column next to it would be a 9, because 59 minutes, if you add one more minute then you get 1 hour. You may have also noticed a slight lack of numbers above 5 on the keyboard. There were full keyboard comptometers available that went up to 9, but largely the skilled comptometerists didn't use the higher numbers. They'd have their hands in a home position, like for touch typing, and they'd enter numbers without even looking at the keyboard and just move their fingers without moving the hands to reach the 1 to 5 numbers, and they'd never move the hands to go to the high numbers. And if they wanted a 9, for instance, they'd just press the 5 and the 4. If they wanted an 8, you could have 2 4s, for a 7 you could have a 4 and a 3, and for a 6 you could have 2 3s, or whatever combination they fancied using. You'll also notice when I clear the output register using the clear button, the numbers sit slightly out of position, and that clear button stays down, so when you enter your first number the clear button will click up and the numbers will just move into position in the window slightly better, like that. And that gives you a clear indication when you enter your first number that the machine had been properly cleared, because you didn't want to start doing an addition when there was actually a number already sitting in the register and it hadn't been cleared properly. As I mentioned earlier, the 2 end columns are for 100ths of a minute rather than seconds. I don't know why that is, there will be a reason, and if you know why, leave a comment, because I'd like to know. But anyway, the maximum that can go up to is obviously 99 hundredths of a minute. If I add one more hundredth, you get a full minute. So if I add another 8 minutes to that column, and then finally add 1 more minute, and it carries over to the next column to give 10 minutes. If I add another 4 minutes to that, so I've got 50 minutes, and add 9 minutes as well, so I've got 59 minutes, add 1 more, and it carries over to give 1 hour. So if I just clear that for a second, and if I put the maximum in every column, let's just see if I can do this right. Okay, so we've got 99,999 hours, 59 minutes, and 99 100ths of a minute. So if I add 1 more 100th of a minute, it'll carry right the way across to give me 100,000 hours. And this bit's kind of really fun, because as it ripples across, it's kind of cool. So I shall add that, and there we go. And yeah, well, and it's not that brilliant, but I kind of like it, and it's good enough, so we'll watch it in slow motion now. So let's imagine we're costing the time it takes to manufacture a window. So we'll say 35 minutes to cut the materials, so 35 minutes, and then 28 minutes to thickness those materials, so 28 minutes, and then 2 hours 15 minutes to shape the materials, so 2 hours 15 minutes. And then cutting the mortise and tenons, we'll say 1 hour 27 minutes, so 1 hour 27 minutes. And assembly of the materials, 45 minutes. And then trim off the ears, 10 minutes. Sand the edges, 1 hour 37 minutes. These are obviously completely fictitious times. And fit the glass, 1 hour. So we've got 8 hours 17 minutes. And then someone realises they can actually shave 1 hour 42 minutes off that time. And you can actually subtract on this machine. Well, in a way. And obviously the machine itself can only add, but you can use complementary numbers which will, in essence, do the subtraction for you. So I want to take 1 hour 42 minutes off that time. So the first thing I have to do is reduce that by 1 minute. So I'm going to actually subtract 1 hour 41 minutes. And doing subtraction on one of these machines will put an overflow into the column here, which you have to ignore, and will clear that right the way over to the end of the display just to make it clearer at the end. So, in the hours column, we want to take off 1 hour. And to do the complementary number, you have to think of it adding up to 9. So if I want to take off 1, I have to actually add 8, which will be the complement of the 1. So we'll do that. And then in the minutes, I want to take 4 out of this column, and this one's only base 6 because it's the tens of minutes. So that needs to add up to 5, so I want to take 4 off, so I'll press a 1 in that column. And then in the final column, and this one's back to base 10, so I want to take off 1, so that will be 8 because it has to add up to 9 every time, so we'll do 8 there. And then, as I said, you've got an overflow here, but we can get rid of that by adding 9s all the way across to move that across to the end. So we'll do... So we've got rid of that overflow over to here, so you can ignore it. So the remainder is 6 hours 35 minutes of manufacturing time. And the reason you have to subtract the 1 from the final digit that you were doing, so because I was taking off 1 hour 42 minutes, but I actually subtracted 1 hour 41, with every other column, when there's a column next to it, there will be an overflow which will increase the column to the left by 1, but for the final digit that overflow isn't there, so you actually have to take 1 less off it to get the result. Yeah, it's confusing, but it does work. There are also additional rules when doing subtraction. If you've got a 9 in the number you're subtracting, or you've got a 0 in the number you're subtracting. So if I put in 9999, so There we go, we've got 9999, and let's say I want to subtract 100 from that. So to take away the 100, it gets a little bit more complicated, because in the first column you're taking away nothing because the 1 for the 100 is in the next column, but because you're taking away nothing you have to put in 9. So we'll do that, and then the next column is where you're going to take away the 1. But you have to then look at, after that, there's 2 noughts at the end. And if there are noughts at the end, you have to ignore those and take 1 off the first digit to the left, which is 1. So the 1 then becomes 0, so you take away 9 again. It is complicated, it does work. And now we've got the overflow here, which I can clear to the next column by putting 9 in there. So we've got the answer 9,899, which is correct. 9999 minus 100 is 9899. I said it was complicated, but it does work. On some of the machines you actually have a little button that you can hold to stop the overflow happening, so you don't have to clear it to the left as I'm doing on this machine, but you don't have that facility on this particular machine. So we'll clear that again and show one of the other rules that you have to remember. So I'll put in again 9999 like that. And you'll notice whenever I use the keyboard on this, I just press it like you would a calculator. But the skilled comptometerists would press all the buttons simultaneously, and they were really quick at entering numbers, which I'm not. So if I want to take away 999 from my 9,999, in the first column I'm going to take away nothing, and you always have to, with the complementary numbers, have it add up to 9. So if I'm taking away nothing, that means I have to enter 9. And then in the next column, with a 9, if it's in the middle of a number you skip it, so I skip that, and another 9, I skip that. If it's at the end of the number you reduce it by 1 as the normal rule, so instead of a 9 that's going to be an 8, and to get the complementary number it has to add up to 9, so I take the 1. So again I've got my overflow, so I'll just clear that from that column by adding 9, so we can ignore that. So 9999 minus 999 is 9,000, so it gives the correct answer again. It's just you have to remember all these little rules all the time. You can do division on these as well, but that's just completely bonkers, and I haven't actually fully worked that out yet. So maybe one day when I do a Felt and Tarrant demonstration I'll have worked out division by that time. So I'll clear that again, and of course we'll still keep ignoring the minutes section, but you can do multiplication on one of these machines as well. So we'll show a bit of that in a second. So let's say I want to multiply 231 by 452. So I'll get my fingers ready in position over the 231, and in the first column I'm going to press that in twice, so 1, 2. Then I just move across, and in this column I'll press 5 times, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then move across one more and press 4 times, so 1, 2, 3, 4, and we should have 104,412. And so that works just fine, and it's actually quite quick. So I'll clear that again, and now I'll show how quick it is if you're doing numbers, large numbers with many zeros in them. So if we want to add 1,000 plus 11,000 plus 22,000 plus 3,000, that's it, job done. You don't have to enter the zeros like you would on a normal calculator, so it's actually quite a lot quicker. And yeah, those do add up to 37,000. And to take it apart, have a look at the inside. There are just 4 screws on the bottom to undo, so we'll take those out now and have a quick look at the mechanism inside. And with the screws undone, the clear button just needs to pull off like that, and then the cover can simply lift off like that. And then the mechanism itself just sits on some rubber feet in the bottom of the case, so that also just lifts out like that. And with the mechanism on these machines, it's completely modular, with each column being a separate module. And so on this machine, being a time machine, it has a separate set of gears, or a different set of gears, on the one column that is base 6 rather than all the rest that are base 10. And that is the only difference to a normal currency or decimal calculating machine of this type. And to see how the mechanism works on one of these machines, you've got the end number wheel here, and it has a little gear on the end down there. And if I press the number 1 button, you'll see a lever just behind the wheel will move up, but it's not engaged with the number wheel at the moment, and it moves up by 1 click. And then when I release the button, the lever at the back will engage with the number wheel, driving it round by 1. If I press the number 5 button, you'll see the lever at the back will move up further, so it's now moved up by 5 of its little notches or teeth, and then as I let go it'll engage with the number wheel and move it by 5. And from a different camera angle, if I press the number 5 really slowly, you'll see the notched lever here move upwards. So you'll see that's starting to move now, and when it gets to the top of its stroke you'll see it click forwards and engage with the number wheel. So nearly there, it's clicked forward, so it's now engaged with the number wheel, and then as I release the button you'll see it turns the number wheel the appropriate amount, which will be 5 in this case because I've pressed the number 5 button. Like that, and now it's ready for the next calculation. There were several models of the plus adder. There was the Model S for sterling currency, and then the Model F that you're looking at on screen now, that was for sterling currency with farthings. The Model C was for normal decimal currency. The Model T that we've been looking at in this video was for time, and the Models Y and Z were for calculating weights. If you want to find out more information about mechanical calculators, Jap Scherfius has a very good website and also YouTube channel. I'll put links to both of those in the description. He has a much greater knowledge of the machines than I do, so it's well worth taking a look. I think that'll do for this video. If you've enjoyed watching, please like the video and subscribe to the channel. There'll be plenty more vintage stuff coming soon. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you in a future video.